is some evidence, however, that a fourth direction exists, and we are moving along it right now. That fourth direction, or dimension, is time. Einstein predicted this connection when he linked space and time into one unified space-time in his theories of relativity. According to him, time and space are two parts of the same thing. To me, this connects with 4D space very nicely. Just as there is no real difference between the Z and the X or Y directions, so too would there not be any difference between time and space if time is just another direction, albeit one that we can't see. And time is important. Without time, our 3D space wouldn't move. It would perpetually be in one state because it's time that allows us to move about in it. But why can't we see it? Why can't we look in the direction of time? To explain this, let's look at the difference between the different dimensional spaces. We best notice this when we consider what 2D objects might look like if they were to move around in 3D space. This is where we start to delve into the model. Let's begin by visualizing a standard 3D space. But because we want to eventually see all of space and time in one model, let's cheat a little. Let's compress all of 3D reality as we know it into a flat, two-dimensional place. In this plane, let's make that our XY plane, which we will label space, which frees up the Z dimension for time. In this model, all 3D people are now just 2D. A 2D person could exist and live their lives in the place marked space at the bottom of our chart. However, by moving them up on the chart at a constant rate, they are also moving through time. Let's for ease and convenience say that the top of our diagram is the future, while the bottom is the past. So the higher up our 2D person goes in this diagram, the older they get. As we don't seem to have a whole lot of control over our ability to travel through time, let's imagine for a second that our 2D person travels upwards at a constant rate, as if there is some consistent force or wind at play pushing them upwards towards the future. Sadly, we cannot slow down time for ourselves simply through willpower, no matter how much we might want to do so. However, it is misleading to say that we can't change it at all. The faster we travel in space, the slower we travel in time. This is one of the guiding principles of Einstein's relativity. This model can express this idea through the power of vectors. As our 2D person tries to move to their left or to their right, their vector of travel changes. While traveling at a fixed rate, like a sail on a ship catching a breeze, we can only go as fast as the wind takes us, so the vector coming out from their front must always remain the same. To travel the fastest through time, our 2D person must orient his vector completely in the future direction or upwards. However, if they are to travel any amount in either direction to their sides, they can only do so by pointing their vector away from their direction of travel. They have motion in the X direction now, but they have done so by reducing their motion in the Z direction. They are moving through space, but at the cost of moving a little slower through time. Taking this to its furthest extreme, our individual has completely flipped on their side and now only has motion in the direction of X and none in the direction of Z. They have velocity in space, but not time. So I suppose this implies our vector is the speed of causality, or the speed of light. If this is the speed we're talking about, then moving at low speeds through space would not have any noticeable difference in our speed through time. We'd have to go really fast before we started to notice anything. The vector still mostly points upwards. An interesting result of this model is that, from the 2D man's perspective, nothing has really changed. He has his own view of what reality is. For him, the vector coming out of his chest is still time. The dimensions of the plane he's lying flat on is his space. To him, it's the rest of the universe that's gone a little weird, but he himself is perfectly normal. However, once he reorients himself, it is clear that the rest of the universe has moved on without him. This is clearer if we add a second 2D person. Initially, both of our individuals do not move in space. All of their vector is pointing in the direction of time. Nothing that strange seems to happen so far. However, if our stick man on the right turns and vectors at near the speed of light for a bit, then reorients himself, while the second 2D man on the left just stays where he is, it becomes clear that our 2D men have not moved at the same rate through time. Assuming that our 2-stick men can somehow still see each other, let's imagine that they somehow project an image of themselves onto the other person's space plane. They immediately notice that there is a difference in age. The one who travelled at the speed of light did not advance so quickly through time as the other, who remained stationary and so is younger. But why do we find this model so compelling? Well, it is because of what those projections would look like during changes in direction. From the point of view of the first stick man, initially the projection of their friend seems fairly normal. However, as they start travelling very quickly in space, and their vector oriented in a direction away from time, a 2D shape reveals its inherent flatness. And from a face-on perspective, it goes from this to this. The speedily travelling stickman appears to flatten, with an effect that's more pronounced the faster they go, and the flattening takes place in the direction of their travel. The stickman who remains stationary might wonder at the strange change that is occurring to their friend, never comprehending that it represents a reorientation of a 2D figure in 3D space. Now, what captures my imagination about this is that this same thing happens in real life. According to Einstein's theories of relativity, objects traveling at great speeds in 3D space would appear from an external observer to flatten in the direction of their travel. This squishing effect happens exactly in line with this model and is to do with time dilation. However, from the person who's traveling's perspective, they do not flatten, but it is the rest of the universe that warps. I talk about this in greater depth in another video of mine, where we can see the effects of spatial warping in a computer model. From their perspective, everything would stretch at the edges of their vision, while their destination would seem further away, which is again what this model would predict. The only difference is that in this model we're just exploring a 2D object stretching. So the stretch is only in one direction, while in real life it's 3D, which means it stretches in 2 directions instead. But that is what you might expect as you turn away from our conventional 3 dimensions and start orienting yourself away from time. But if this is correct, so what? Why does it matter? If time is truly a direction, then it deepens our understanding of the universe. It also raises more questions. What is the force that pushes us ever forward in time? Why does it seem that we can never move against it? Although in this model there is no reason why a vector could not point downwards, in real life that doesn't seem to ever happen. This model also answers the question of, if time is a direction, what is our shape in time? Does part of us protrude into the past or into the future? According to this model, that does not happen. We are flat pancakes in the 4th dimension, pennies that look round when you look at us head on, but revealing our thinness when we turn away from you. That's a strange thought, but it may just be true. This might explain why we are unable to see through time. We just don't extend enough in that direction for it to be visible. Your form might be quite different than you first thought. Of course, this model is just a theory of